work for clients like Nickelodeon, Disney, and once we lose like really knowledgeable people, that's really where we lose the business entirely. We don't have many products of our own to go ahead and sell. So it was really important to all of our jobs that we unionize.
We've got some folks that have been at the center of some really big, some other entertainment organizing in the video FX industry and the video game industry. Now, the video FX industry is kind of unique in Hollywood because it's basically the only sector that is non-union, or that has been non-union before this kicked off. Now IATSE has organized VFX workers at both Disney and Marvel.
That's right.
I'm sure that we're going to be seeing some more. And we've got somebody from one of those campaigns, and we have somebody from Working Man Studios who was involved in the organization of that company. So welcome to the show, folks.
Hi, how you doing?
Doing good.
Happy to be here.
Hey, yeah, welcome. So I just wanted to start by giving each of y'all a chance to introduce yourself and kind of share your story. Tell us a little bit about what you do for work, what got you interested in unionizing, and of course, what got you involved in the campaign, and what have you been doing in the campaign? So Anna, let's start with you.
Hi, my name is Anna George. I work in VFX, visual effects for Marvel Studios. Visual effects is interesting because it's kind of split into two sides, where you have the artistic element of it, and you also have the project management element of it. So I've been working for the project management element of it, working directly for Marvel on a couple of their previous Disney Plus shows. I've worked my way up, and now my next job title is going to be VFX coordinator. So essentially coordinating the artwork that comes from the different vendors they use on their shows and movies. I got interested in unionizing as someone who's only been in the industry for about a year. When I just realized that people, even in the same department, different protections from unions were being paid infinitely differently than I was being paid.
Right.
Someone on the same tier as me was being paid double what I was making. And it wasn't because their job was more important or because their job was harder. It was just because they were protected and I wasn't. So
Right.
I met up with our organizer and we jumped in from there.
That is so awesome. Yeah, I love to hear that. And I mean, I think it's always remarkable when someone who's still pretty new, like, just jumps right in. But sometimes that's when it's the most stark, right? Because you are new and you're like really looking around and experiencing what you're experiencing, and you're starting to ask questions about what's going on and trying to get the lay of the land. And sometimes that's when you get activated. And I know for my personal story, that was kind of the same situation. I started out as a teacher, and it was within my first year in the classroom. I was like, wow, this is not how it's supposed to be. We've got to do something. So yeah, I love to hear that. So thank you, Anna. And I'm curious about the video game industry. Matthew, could you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what got you involved as well?
Sure. Hi, I'm Matthew Imislik. I am a project manager at Working Man, but I was an artist there for about 9.5 years before I got the job. And I got the promotion because all of our other project managers left. We had some pretty large layoffs at the beginning of this year. And it took everyone by surprise. It was just hi, everybody. Most of you are going to be let go, or a good chunk of you are going to be let go. And you'll find out by the end of the day if you still have a job, which really did not make relations with management much better. But then over the next coming months, just other people just kind of left for their own reasons. People had been around for like a while, and we lost a lot of tribal knowledge. That's where we lost our project managers. And at a certain point, like, we kind of realized that if we did not make any big change, that our company was just going to like fall under, and we were all going to lose our jobs. And if management wasn't going to do anything about it, then we were. The troublesome part with the company that we're with right now is that we are a client-based one. So we don't have any like products unto themselves. Like it is all run by labor. We work for clients like, Nickelodeon, Disney. We're just like making these games. And once we lose like really knowledgeable people, like that's really where we lose the business entirely. We don't have any many products of our own to go ahead and sell. So it was really important to all of our jobs that we unionize.
Wow, yeah, I really appreciate you sharing that. And there was a couple of things that resonated with me, and one would be just how important the recruitment and retention of employees is in your situation, right? As you spoke to that client relationship and having people on staff with those experiences, with those relationships, and when you lose that, you lose a ton. So being able to retain folks, and also something you mentioned that really stuck out is basically having to save the company from itself is what kind of it reminded me of. And I've talked to a lot of workers in those kind of situations where they see, they want the company to be successful. They want to be successful in their own jobs. But they see things that are happening from ownership and from management that are really a detriment to that. And that can often be a spur into organizing. So I'm curious, Matthew, let's start with you. What all did you do during this organizing campaign? And tell us, how did it get kicked off? Because the thing that's really interesting about this campaign is the very first video game IATSE union, to my knowledge, right? So I'm curious, what got it started?
It was me just calling the friends I had at the company, the people that I trusted, where I knew even if they were like, that's a terrible idea, they'd tell me and it would just stop there. But everyone that I called, including one person who ended up confiding to me that like they were quitting anyway. So they were like, I'd love to do this, but I already got a new job. Everyone was in support, like absolutely everyone. So then once we started, like all of us split up the rest of the company, we're like, okay, you contact these people, you contact these people. And we slowly built it up until we had about like half of the people in our bargaining unit pretty much on board with the idea before a lot of us even really knew how a union worked or what, really those changes would mean, other than just we would have a union. Once we had those numbers, just a small group of us, we reached out to some other union organizers. We took some classes, we read books, and finally we reached out to IATSE, who, was happy that we'd done a lot of the work so far, but they kind of took us back to square one and made sure that we really made sure that our numbers were set. And, I'm really glad that we worked with them. We ended up getting a unanimous vote when we got up to our election. So, obviously whatever they advised us worked out pretty well.
That is huge to have a unanimous victory. And you mentioned an election. So I take it the company did not recognize the union, right? They had the option, but they chose not to recognize.
I think they were also not quite sure what the whole process was. I'm pretty sure they just Googled some stuff and rolled with it. They came to us at first with, we'll have an election by like a neutral third party. And there are companies that do these sorts of things. So we were like, okay, cool. I hadn't really heard about that before, but that sounds pretty great. IATSE was really on board with it. And then later on, they came back to us and they said, hey, turns out there's this whole branch of government that has like an agency that does these elections for us. So we're just going to do that instead, which ended up putting the whole efforts off by a month. Obviously, if they were really trying to stomp the union and really slow stuff down as much as possible, that was a really great move. Honestly, I think it just kind of came out of a place of ignorance, but as much as they try to use verbiage that says they're positive, they're really encouraging of it, they've still done a lot of really small things and really small statements that, really kind of echo away at the work that we've done. Probably the one that hurts the most is they kept saying congratulations for joining the union when we went through the hard work of forming a union, which is a totally different thing. So yeah, maybe not the most receptive, but I've definitely heard of worse.
Right. Yeah, I think that's really interesting, and I appreciate you sharing that experience, because it is new for the video game industry, and so it is like conceivable that a lot of people in corporate management are not going to be familiar with the union process or what it means when their workers want to unionize. And something else I think that's worth highlighting there is that there's a broad spectrum of responses from companies. And of course, listeners to our show are familiar with Amazon and Starbucks and like how extreme a union busting campaign can be. But it really varies wildly. And you also have companies that are like collaborative and recognize the union right off the bat and everything in between. So those experiences really just vary from place to place. But yeah, I just want to emphasize something you said, which is starting the union from scratch, like starting in a new shop, going through that process of building an organizing committee and splitting up the employees and talking to folks. That's hard work. It's important work. And so I just really want to congratulate y'all on doing that and being able to win unanimously. I think is just really a testament to your organizing and a testament to the hard work and the unity that you were able to build.
Thank you.
And Anna, I'm curious about your campaign. Tell us a little bit about how things got kicked off at Marvel VFX. What were some of the issues and how did the process play out there?
Hey, 5 seconds. Just wanted to say that this is only possible because of our donors. If you want to see more of this, then consider donating yourself at tvlr.fm/donate.
So I worked closely with our organizer, Mark Patch. The biggest thing is what you were talking about, where you spend so much time just talking to every single individual employee. You need to know that every employee that you're working with is going to be voting yes, and that this is what they want. And I think it was resounding at Marvel. As long as I've been there, it's something that we've talked about. And what you hear in the VFX industry all the time is how badly this was needed. And so I worked with him, just reaching out to people. It's luckily a small enough community that you can text your friends and they can text their friends. And next thing you know, you've spider webbed into chatting with everyone and getting that resounding yes that we were really excited about. From there, it was then making sure that everyone understood how the ballots worked. So when the vote happened, it could happen quickly and it would happen effectively, getting people the shirts so that they could be proud of being a part of IATSE, and also doing all of this without necessarily alerting the company that it was happening. Because we wanted to have our solidarity and our understanding there first before we went to Disney.
Right. And that's something that is important. It's not that you're like hiding anything per se. You're not like, being secret spies or anything like that. It's just, there will be a time when it's right to talk to management and to let them know, hey, we're a union, here's what we're about. And you just want it to be that right time after you've developed those relationships and built that solidarity, like you said. And a lot of it really is as simple as a phone tree and figuring out who's going to call who's going to text who, and take notes on those conversations and see where those conversations lead you, and get to know the issues that people have, because what you think are the issues may not be the issues for every single person. What resonates with some people won't resonate with others, and listening to what those issues are is so important. And I'm curious, were there any, just like real hot button issues that really were motivating workers at Marvel VFX? Was there anything that really stood out that's like, what, we ought to fix this?
Yeah, so I think the unanimous one, the one that everybody is on the side of, is higher pay. I remember a conversation I had with a coworker where I was telling her, if I could just make this amount of money, like if I just could get to this point in my career where I was making this amount, that I would be set for life. I would never need a raise. I'd be so set. And as I told her this, she's in the Editors Guild. And as I was telling her this, I finished and she just looked at me and she went, "That's so sad." Because the number that I was dreaming about was $500 less a week than her minimum. that her union required. And so like that kind of speaks, I think, to how like desperately we deserve to be on the same pay rate as a majority of the industry. That was like one of the big conversations I had with a lot of people. Additionally, the way that overtime works in our industry is really interesting. So for both of my positions, I was hired with a 60-hour minimum. And on at least one of the shows, I met that 60-hour minimum every week. On the second show I was hired on, I was hired with a 60-hour minimum with the understanding that there would be no daily overtime, even if I worked it. If you work, instead of your 12-hour day, you work a 15-hour day, there won't be any overtime. So that's something that a lot of people have been hired with the understanding of, and they need to see gone. We have to get rid of it. It's so dangerous for all of our workers to not be receiving the compensation they deserve for overtime, especially when we are working these crazy hours. Additionally, it gets rid of the incentive on the company to not work overtime if they don't have to pay us overtime. It allows them to just kind of, use us as workhorses without having to think about the consequences of a 15-hour day.
Right.
And so
absolutely.
I think that's one of the most important things.
Yeah, that is huge. I mean, and that really sticks with me, what a persistent issue that is for workers all over this country in so many different industries, right? We see the UAW is fighting right now for a shorter work week. And it's not because realistically they expect all their members would only work 32 hours a week. It's because they know they're going to be asked to work well beyond that, right? Beyond even 40, into the 50s, into the 60s. And there has to be an effective deterrent for companies to, otherwise they will use and abuse you and exploit your time. And it is dangerous for workers to not have that time. It is unhealthy for workers to not have that time. We fought for the 8-hour day and a 40-hour work week 100 years ago. And we have folks like yourself who are out there doing 60-hour weeks. And it's just really, it's an issue that I think is so widespread. And I think that's one of the reasons why having a union is so important. Being able to address this, to come to the table with management and really bargain over your time and what the value of your time and the benefits that you should receive for your time. I think that's huge. And so one question that we got from one of my IATSE 900 brothers was for you, Matthew, which was about the video game industry. And, because unionization is so new in the video game industry, you may not have a lot of insight here yet, but I'm curious, are there any companies that have been pro-union or, kind of at least positive neutral in this process? Or what about the reverse? Have there been any companies in the video game industry that have been really notoriously anti-union that we should know about? And not to put you in a delicate situation where, obviously if you don't want to speak about it or if there's some concerns there, I don't want you to say anything that you don't feel comfortable saying. But we did get that question about kind of like the lay of the land in the video game industry with unions.
I'm just trying to remember specific names. There was one company recently where their QA department had unionized, and their contracts ran out, and the company decided just not to renew those contracts. And that's kind of one of those things where it's hard to tell if that's strictly anti-union, or if that's just, the game industry as a whole, just how they operate things. We'd had so many layoffs in the past month and a half throughout, the entire industry. So many companies have let go of so many people, but that's kind of been the environment here for the past 20 years. When I started in the industry, I thought every year I was going to get let go because you would just constantly get stories about this sort of stuff.
Right.
So at a certain point, it's not really that a lot of the companies are anti-union as much as they are designed to be anti-employee. When they're designed to be anti-employee, they just kind of end up being anti-union. As far as companies that have been open and receptive to it, I vaguely recall Double Fine, the company that does Psychonauts. They did that like heavy metal, like action RPG strategy game. I vaguely remember the CEO or founder or whatever talking very favorably about unions and how the industry has to unionize. And then a lot of us just talking about like, yeah, but Double Fine's not unionized. That's a really strong statement to make when, you know, your company, you know, is not unionized. So for the industry as a whole, I'd say probably negative.
Yeah, you just touched on something really interesting there, which is like, you know, you've got these companies that don't always practice what they preach. You have some companies that put out progressive rhetoric. You know, we've seen that like in the nonprofit industry. We've seen some really tough campaigns in the nonprofit industry where these employers that are ostensibly progressive and like, well, in some cases even say pro-union things in their programming, but it's sometimes a different story when it's their own employees that start to organize. But something else that you talked about in terms of the industry itself and how it is really geared against the employees, to me speaks to the need for unionization. And when you talk about layoffs and how persistent those can be and the persistent fear of layoffs, you know, I think about how in a union contract you can fight for protections around layoffs, even if it's as little as just getting adequate notice, right? So that you don't have that scenario happen to you again where you walk in to work one day and you're told, well, some of y'all are not coming back and you'll know by the end of today. You know, that kind of situation is just really not acceptable for working people to experience. So whether it's getting an adequate notice in advance, getting severance packages, getting protections from layoffs, protecting your time and the work hours and overtime, there are just so many reasons why, whether you're in the VFX industry, the video games industry, or so many other industries, why a union is good and why a union is necessary to make your lives better. And so I really appreciate both of y'all for your courage and for paving the way for folks in IATSE and for workers across the country. And I wanted to give y'all a chance and just see, do you have a question for your other panelists here about the campaign that they experienced? So I was just curious, Anna, Matthew, if either of y'all had a question for the other one.
I do, if possible. So we're in our very, very early stages of the negotiation committee. And I was wondering if you guys have hit that stage yet and what you're doing to prepare, because we're in that part and I'm, you know, finding my footing, but it's intimidating, definitely. And I was wondering what that was like for you guys.
I was going to ask you the same thing. I think we've been operating on the same timeline. No, literally, one of the weird parts of having this campaign so close to you guys and within the same parent organizations the whole time, we're like, oh, they're kind of stealing the wind from our sails because that's exciting, all the Marvel stuff. But it's been really amazing, just like, oh no, like a lot of these articles are like kind of putting us together or putting us in the context of like larger movements. So it's always just really interesting going like, oh yeah, it's not just our company, it's every company. So
hell yeah.
Absolutely. And I hope we can link arms in this as we go, especially since we're on the same page, that we can, you know, really take these steps together and battle the intimidating wall of the negotiation committee.
Yeah, absolutely. I really hope that too. I think there's just a lot of strength in collaboration. And so, yeah, I definitely encourage y'all to be in collaboration as much as possible and bounce ideas off each other and learn from each other and have each other's back. I think that's huge. And it has been really cool as an IATSE member to see this happening. To have Marvel, Disney, and a video game company all within this same little time period has just been really exciting. one of my roles with the local 900 is political coordinator, and so I give a report every month basically talking about what's happening in IATSE. And it's been really exciting to share with our members these kind of wins, to win unanimously, to be the first union in the particular industry. It's just huge. And it really, I think, empowers other workers to realize it's not just me. I'm not alone. There are other folks who feel this way, and there are other folks who are doing something about it. And I love that. So I wanted to wrap up here and just give each of y'all a chance to kind of give some parting words about the campaign, anything you've learned, anything you want to share with fellow IATSE members, or just working folks more broadly about labor organizing and your experience.
I would just say that, at the end of the day, it's not about any one company. It's about bringing the VFX workers up onto the same tier as the majority of the industry, and just send out a thanks to all of the other departments who have paved the way for us to be able to do this and made our next steps so straightforward, because they've allowed us to look out for what we need to look out for. And I think they're going to allow us to get what we deserve at the end of the day.
And Matthew, how about you?
I don't know. I guess I would say I'm just really excited to see what the next few years are going to be like. It's been a meteoric rise in the number of unions across so many different industries. And I'm just, as much as work as we're putting into our own union and as much work as we're putting into our own negotiations, we're putting just as much work into just looking and talking to people at with the industry at large. And I'm just really excited to see what comes out of all this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I did think of one last question. I would be remiss if I didn't ask y'all before I let y'all go. Any cool projects that you're working on? So Anna, Marvel VFX, you got any cool project that you're about to be assigned to?
Not at the moment. Right now, I think we're mostly putting all of our solidarity and support behind SAG as we wait for them to get what they deserve so that we can get the industry up and running again.
Copy
Unfortunately,
that.
Sorry, I don't have anything exciting.
Matthew, how about you?
I think most of the stuff I'm on is NDA. I think the last project that came out was for the Paw Patrol movie. So go see the Paw Patrol movie, I guess.
Well, I just want to say again that I appreciate y'all's time, making some time to talk with the Valley Labor Report this morning. It means a lot to us, and it means a lot to me as, just as someone who is a member of the union and as someone who wants to see unions grow, to know that y'all are doing this in new areas really means a lot. So I appreciate it. And y'all keep up the good work.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks, y'all.
All right, folks. That was a great conversation. Enjoyed hearing from them. It's always good to see industries start to unionize. We're looking for not only unionization, but good contracts in that industry here.
That's right. Yeah. That's always going to be, one of the interesting things to see is when you get to bargaining time. But I love that they are breaking new ground in those areas, because the video game industry desperately needs unions. In the VFX industry, like you mentioned at the onset of the interview, just this pocket of non-union workforce that's been easily exploited as a result. So shout out to both of them. Shout out to IATSE for really pursuing this new organizing. It's necessary.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.